So I'm going to introduce our panel, and we really are very lucky to have all of our panelists here today. There are folks in our local community who are going to share their experience, share what they're doing to ensure that local food jobs are good jobs. They're coming from different perspectives, they work in different sectors of the food system, and I think it'll be really, really interesting to hear what they've been working on, and both what's been working for them and some challenges that they've been facing in this process. So we're going to hear from each of them one at a time, and then after each of them has had a chance to present, we're going to open it up for questions from you all. And if you have also questions at that time for either of our keynotes, Alex or Urban, you can ask them then as well. So I'm going to briefly introduce all of them, and then they're going to come up one at a time to share their experience and work with you. So our first panelist is Dave Jackson from Enterprise Farm. Our second, a little clapping doesn't hurt, that's nice. Our second panelist is Orvelio Ramirez, who works with Dave at Enterprise and is also a member of Just Communities, which is an immigration reform organization here in the Valley, and Bliss Requitrouts. I've been really working on that name for the last 2 minutes and it didn't come out right. She's an organizer with Just Communities and she's going to be interpreting for Orvelio. Then, yeah, give her a hand. It's not an easy job and she's doing it all by herself today. So I really want to recognize Bliss for all the work she's doing. Annie Allred, who works at the River Valley Market and is a union steward there. And then Glenroy Buchanan, who is from the Pioneer Valley New England Growers Co-op. And Rebekah Hanlon from Valley Green Feast, which is a worker co-op here in the Valley. So Dave is going to kick it off, and yeah, welcome him.
See if we can get this right. Everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Dave Jackson, Enterprise Farm. Our farm is based up in Whately, right on the banks of the beautiful Connecticut River. We, along with my family and staff, run about a 100-acre vegetable operation, which in the grand scheme of things is not a huge farm, but it's big enough that I feel like I can come here and speak to you guys on a nuts and bolts basis about labor profiles and the different labor groups types of people who work on the farm. Sam really wanted me to touch on the mechanics, and I also want to kind of bring up some of the issues that each of the different groups that work on the farm or types of workers that we have. So, speak up? Yeah. All right, sorry. This should be easy, but talking about farm work, farm labor, immigration reform, and all the issues that farmers, I am a farmer, have to kind of go through to figure out how to run their operations. It's going to be a challenge in 6 minutes, but I'll do my best. Before I get started, the first thing I really want to emphasize, too loud? Not loud enough? Feedback. Like going back to the 60s. First thing I want to emphasize is farm work is not unskilled labor. I think a lot of people feel like, oh yeah, anybody can go out and pick a bunch of kale or drive a tractor, and it's certainly not true. The big challenge for a farmer or any farm operation is how do you build experience into an equation when you're dealing with seasonal labor, which rolls over all the time. So that is a big issue going forward because you can't just hire new people all the time and expect to maintain your operation. Knowing that, the first group of people we have working on the farm is what we call our local help, and that is predominantly made up of young people probably between the ages of 18 and 26 who are coming into agriculture today with a real sincere interest in farming as a vocation. It's no longer seen as a prison sentence, but a real profession, which is a great thing compared to a number of years ago. However, this young group of people really, in many ways, lack a lot of work skill experience, haven't gotten out of college, not really understanding all the complexities and hard work that go into running a farm operation. But generally, when we bring young people in and try to bring them up to speed, we'll use them in terms of doing things like farmers markets, working on packing CSA boxes, greenhouse work, and a little bit of field work. But as far as the bigger production piece, we find that the more skilled and experienced workers will be out doing the harvesting and tractor work and all that kind of stuff. So, first piece is your local help. Second big piece, and I think a big piece of what is being looked at here today, is what we call migrant workers or seasonal workers. We at Enterprise have a crew that comes up every year from Florida, somewhere between 10 or 12 guys, some who have been with us since the beginning, about 10 years ago, and others who come with them as others leave to go back home. The seasonal workers probably present the biggest challenge for immigration reform going forward because they come with a lot of barriers. We have literacy, we have language skills, we have the whole computer age upon us, where computer literacy is another big issue, and then there's driver's licenses, which is a big issue going forward with many of the compliance issues that the farm faces today. So we have our seasonal workers. The last piece of the puzzle, which is also a big and complex piece that I'm literally on the phone right now trying to resolve, we are part of the guest worker program, the H2A worker program, which I'm not sure how many people know about. See a lot of guys from Jamaica working in the farm. It's around here, they're part of the H2A program, but it's not specifically Jamaican, it can be Mexican, people from all over the Caribbean. The guest worker program is really outdated, really archaic. The paperwork is ridiculously long and complicated, but it brings one benefit, that we get a return group of guys pretty much every year, and the wage that the H2A program requires of the farm is definitely a much better wage than minimum wage, because it's an average wage that's calculated from the national wage pool, not just New England. So the wage is going to be pushing 12 bucks an hour this year, which is not great pay, but it's certainly a lot better than minimum. So those three pieces in place. We also have a year-round staff. One of the great things that the local movement has brought to the valley is an opportunity for farms like us to operate year-round. And the labor pool that we use for that is actually a combination of all three. So currently on the farm, we've employed 8 people throughout the course of the season. The winter season to pack for our winter CSA program. That includes 2 guys who work doing tractor work for me, continue to maintain all the equipment. We have 3 people who work in the office to run the CSA, which is a very legitimate part of the agricultural profession. And then Cookie will speak next, and a couple other local people who've stayed on. So that is, with 30 seconds left, the kind of nuts and bolts of a farm and some of the issues. Immigration reform has gone nowhere for the last 10 years. We've been waiting and waiting. So we'll be curious to see where it goes from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Next we have Orvelio Ramirez. Thank you.
Hola, mucho gusto por estar acá. Es un gusto para mí poder hablar entre ustedes hoy.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, sharing my thoughts.
Voy a empezar a contar un poco de mi historia sobre por qué estoy acá, los motivos que me hizo venir a este país como inmigrante.
As an immigrant worker, I'm going to start my story today by talking with you about why I came here to this country.
Es lindo estar acá en este país, pero más sin embargo, los retos que nos presentamos para llegar a este lugar es algo difícil.
It's a blessing to be in this country, but the challenges that we go through to get here are something very difficult.
Lo difícil es tener que caminar 3 días con galones de agua encima y andar con ese miedo de que ya no poder volver a ver la familia porque uno nunca sabe qué es lo que le pueda pasar a uno en el camino.
So it's a 3-day walk, carrying your gallons of water with you to come to this country. Every moment with that fear of not knowing what's going to happen to you in that desert, if you're going to be able to arrive, if you're ever going to see your family again.
Pero lo bueno que llegamos a este punto y llegamos hasta este país con las ganas de seguir adelante, de apoyar a la familia económicamente, porque pues la economía en México es mala.
Luckily, myself and others, we have been able to come to this country. We have made that journey to be able to support ourselves and support our families because of the bad economic situation in Mexico.
Porque yo creo que como cualquier persona, todos deseamos un futuro mejor, un futuro donde uno le pueda brindar algo mejor a la familia, mejor a uno, mejor en el futuro.
I feel like I'm the same as any other person, that I'm here looking for a better future for myself, for my family, and to have improved opportunities.
Bueno, ahora voy a hablar sobre lo que es de la finca, mi trabajo, sentirse conforme uno mismo en este país.
So now I would like to talk with you about my experiences as a farm worker in this country.
Pues es algo lindo, uno lo siente como si fuera su segundo hogar, porque pasa el tiempo completo uno en el trabajo, sentirse con la amabilidad del patrón, de sentirse que al menos no hay gente racista, no hay tanta gente racista, de que habemos mucho que no nos echan al lado.
So in enterprise farms, I feel like the farm is my second home because there are such good people that I'm working with. I've had the opportunity to work with folks who aren't quite so racist, and I don't know.
Ya se te olvidó. Bueno, es algo lindo convivir con gente como lo que son americanos, jamaiquinos, guatemaltecos. Es algo bueno porque pues se ve que gente unida y convivir día a día por el trabajo.
It's something beautiful, actually, to be working in shared culture with folks who are Americans from this country, with Jamaican workers, other immigrant workers, for us to all live together, or not live together, but work together, and be working for shared goals and have pleasant experiences.
Y más que nada uno se siente contento porque pues no lo tratan mal a uno, a pesar de dónde somos, de color que seamos y todo eso. Es algo lindo.
And it's something really special to not be treated differently or not be treated badly for being a person of color.
Y uno se siente con esa confianza de que uno puede trabajar justamente porque en muchos casos y en muchos lugares ha habido mucho racismo de que los mismos patrones tratan como peones a sus trabajadores.
And it's been a really great opportunity for me because I have seen in so many other places how workers are being treated as less than, or being treated as more like slave workers than anything by their abusive bosses.
Y pues por eso le quiero dar también las gracias a lo que es Dave, de que pues abrió las puertas de la finca para poder trabajar ahí en ese lugar y ofrecerme un futuro mejor.
And so to that end, I would like to say thank you to Dave for opening his doors to me and providing me that opportunity to work here with him and have that better opportunity.
Y más que nada, pues la experiencia que ha sido trabajar en el campo, cómo cultivar las verduras de acá y todo eso, contribuir con la economía, cómo la gente inmigrante contribuye con la economía de Estados Unidos, y trabajando en fincas y todo eso, pues es una motivación grande.
It's also a great motivation to see how the immigrant community is contributing to this country working in farms.
Bueno, ahora voy a cambiar de otro punto lo que es sobre lo que es el programa de Comunidades Justas.
And I also want to talk about my participation with Just Communities.
La organización de Comunidades Justas se enfoca más que nada en defender a la gente inmigrante, a la familia inmigrante.
Just Communities is an organization focused on supporting and defending immigrant families.
Y hacer un cambio en restaurar a la comunidad latina.
And it's an organization that's working to make a positive change for the Latino community.
En nuestras vidas como trabajadores, inmigrantes.
In our lives as immigrant workers.
Y pues más que nada nos estamos enfocando también en sobre qué son las licencias de conducir.
One of the main goals for us as an organization is obtaining driver's licenses for immigrant workers.
Buscamos la manera de aliarnos con las fincas, de conseguir firmas. Por ahora llevamos alrededor de 60 firmas para apoyar lo que es un paso muy grande a la licencia de conducir.
At this point, we've been able to secure support from almost 60 farms who are supporting us in the shared objective of getting driver's licenses for immigrant workers.
Y más que nada, pues, cómo le afectan a muchas personas que a los inmigrantes no tengan licencia, por lo menos en las fincas, de que muchos patrones quisieran darle de conducir a los carros a uno, pero pues ellos también tienen el temor por la policía de que uno lo paren y no tener licencia.
And lack of licenses, driver's licenses for immigrant workers is a shared problem in the farms because bosses will want to ask their workers to drive food somewhere. They'll have the same fear that we have every day of having something happen on the roads or coming into some issue for not having a driver's license.
Y más que nada nos enfocamos en eso por lo mismo de que pues uno quiere andar seguro en la calle sin miedo de que uno lo pare el policía y poder ser arrestado.
For us as immigrants, licenses signify safety and freedom, so that we'll be able to move through the streets of Massachusetts without that fear that we're going to be stopped, we're going to be arrested, we're going to be harassed.
Y ahora lo que se está mostrando ahí en la pantalla es como pidiéndoles un favor de que para que mandes un mensaje de texto para apoyar sobre las licencias.
So we'd like to ask all of you right now to take a second and take an action step in support of driver's licenses by texting licenses to 413-306-3483 as a form of text signing on to our petition for driver's licenses.
Y pues más que nada todos los finqueros que están acá, los dueños de finca, los trabajadores de finca que estamos recolectando las firmas, pues les pido favor si ustedes pueden lo que es apoyarnos con más firmas para dar un paso más grande aún.
And I have a special request to anyone here who is a farmer or who is representing a farm that you take a second today to formally sign your business on in support of the Safe Driving Act so that we can count with your support in this fight.
Y pues nos estarían apoyando en todo este paso que hemos dado porque pues es grande y todo lleva tiempo para hacer eso. Y pues, ¿qué persona inmigrante no quiere una reforma? Yo creo que todos.
And we'll be really grateful for your signing on and standing with us because it is a long fight, and what immigrant doesn't want to see immigration reform in this country?
Our next presenter is Annie Allred, who's a union steward with UFCW at River Valley Market.
Hi, my name is Annie Allred. I work at River Valley Market as a produce assistant and also a UFCW UFCW union steward. I'm asked to share some of our experiences as workers, why we unionized, and how that's making a good job a better job. Though really just like in public speaking, yes, I'm really grateful for the opportunity. For me, the co-op is about the community, fresh local food, and specifically produce, fresh food, local farmers, and conveying that story to our customers and providing fresh local food. It's an awesome thing, and it's the circle. It's what makes stronger communities. I started at River Valley April of 2008, almost 6 years ago, when the store was empty shelves. I saw firsthand all of the work that goes into a new store. It's very much like recreating a wheel. But over the years, it's been a difficult but an amazing journey. When I first started, we had a new employee orientation at the old Pleasant Street Theater. We had about 60 employees excited to be part of this new store that had finally come to the area. We were given the promise of a different place of employment, one that valued the local food system, had a triple bottom line, where workers mattered and had a say in shaping their workplace. From the early days, workers began to encounter reoccurring problems. Communication has been a key issue. Too often one way with minimal two-way dialogue. This directly contributed to the lack of information for workers. And this was a big challenge because as co-op people, we're all about information, especially when it pertains to our working environment. There were also unclear procedures and policies that were matched with arbitrary enforcement. These all fostered an environment where workers felt that they could not safely have their voices heard. Please don't get me wrong, the working conditions have been good at River Valley, but they could be so much better. In the fall of 2011, we began off-site worker meetings to create positive change in the workplace. From there, we soon saw the need for UFCW as a valuable partnership and a means to address worker issues. February 10th, 2012, we had a card check and gained union recognition. Our first union contract was signed July 29, 2013, and was a huge success for workers. Through the unionization process, we utilize interest-based bargaining as a tool to work towards mutual benefit, basically sitting down union stewards representing the workers and management and sitting down talking through the issues to come to a common agreement for the better good of all. Our contract brought River Valley workers a just cause, where management must have just cause for discipline and termination. We also gained seniority. It affects shift preferences and schedules for workers. It allows us to have a life outside of work, and it also is a good means to retain workers. We gain Weingarten rights, the right to union representation in disciplinary meetings with the supervisor. We also have clear protocol about disciplinary procedures and equitable enforcement. We now have a grievance procedure where decisions or possible contract violations can be challenged and resolved. We also created a labor management committee where staff issues are raised by union stewards and discussed with management to improve the working conditions and hopefully making it closer to the ideals of a progressive workplace. Along the way, we've had some challenges. One of those is building a new relationship with the union and management, and we are working on building trust and improving open communication. Oddly enough, these meetings, the labor management meetings have been challenging. Too often agreeing to disagree on key issues and unable to work towards a compromise. But regardless, we've got the monthly opportunity to sit down and bring up the issues at hand. Very much a work in progress, but in a positive direction. There's a lot of opportunities for change and improvement. One is the momentum from the livable wage. I feel that is a key to becoming a progressive place of employment. It improves the conditions of pay for workers and allows us to thrive and to also contribute to the community and to participate in the local food system that we are all creating. News of the unionization at River Valley has led the way for Franklin County Co-op as well as Brattleboro Co-op to unionize, improving the working conditions and giving a voice to workers there. The growing movement of co-op unionization is creating more union jobs, which is an awesome thing. But it also points to larger issues of organizational structure in the workplace. The hierarchy structure and organization of the business is not always conducive to collective decision-making and worker involvement. The co-op structure, with its policy of governance, keeps the board and store operations, also the workers and the member owners, very separate with little actual communication. We also have a lack of worker representation on the board, which some workers feel is problematic. Despite that, the co-op model allows for member owners to have a voice where they can show their support for the workers and for the union and to help make River Valley a progressive co-op in all matters. We as workers hope to better communicate our issues and to build stronger relationships with management, the board, member owners, creating a better community, connecting everybody, and building the local food system that we're all striving towards. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. And next we're going to hear from Glenroy Buchanan.
Definitely was dreading that. I know he was going to call my name next. Basically, let me move this forward really quickly. One of the things I want to talk about is how we got together to do what we're doing right now in terms of farming on a very small scale that we exist. There was no formal meeting, there was no formal get-together, there was no letter sent out. I was living on East Street at the Bem farm, and used to help with pick corn and do all sort of things, pick butternut squash. And usually in the evening when we would finish working, a lot of the guys would just sit around in what we call the garage. And we use a term we call reasoning, just talking, but we use the term reasoning. And what happens is a lot of the guys who come to work here, some of them enter the United States as early as late February, early March, and a lot of them are here until after Thanksgiving. And so a lot of them, like other people, get homesick. They get homesick for not seeing their kids, their wives, their families. And we're actually just talking about some of the things that they miss eating in the country that they were from, some of the foods that they would like to eat when they're here. And so we started to talk about maybe putting a garden together and growing some of those things, one being a green by the name of callaloo. And so from that, we figured that might be a start, and we wanted to grow some pumpkins. So the other part was to have land. Now some people say, how could you have a co-op and you don't own any tractors, you don't have any plows, you don't own any farmland? Well, we don't. And my response to people a lot of times would be to say, well, let me give you an idea or an example. I said, you would stand a better chance of going into your refrigerator and grabbing a stick of frozen butter and throwing it and hitting the sun than you would to buy cheap land in Hadley. So what I was able to do, I kept asking these guys, have any of them ever talked to the farmers that they work for? Did anyone ever go to the farm and say, hey, listen, can I use some of your land? The answer was always, no, man, these guys are not going to let us use their land. You know, we're working for them, blah, blah, blah. Have you ever asked them? No response. So I decided to go to one of the farmers and say, listen, we're looking for a piece of land to grow a few vegetables. And the farmer was like, oh man, that's no problem. How much do you need? You need a half an acre, quarter acre, 2 acres, 3 acres? I got a lot of land. Okay, good. So we started off from that kind of model, going to the farmers and asking them. And because a lot of these guys were already working for these farmers, they already knew, as you mentioned before, they aren't unskilled labor. They're very, very skilled labor. They know how to drive every equipment on that farm. They know how to do everything. And so the farmers pointed out the land that we could use within proximity of where his fields were. So when they go out to plow his field as a part of their contract as laborers, they could easily make a U-turn and do the plowing on the land that he offered us. And so we started from that model. And so it's not, right now we're not on paper, we don't have like this contract of how we would work. We all sit down and decide what people want to grow. We try not to duplicate the same thing. And we also try to make sure that the things that we grow will fit into the communities that we're selling. So for instance, if I use Springfield or Mesa Square as an example, Mesa Square probably have one of the most diverse market in this area, or matter of fact, probably in Massachusetts, but they have, that market every Saturday they have blacks, white, they have Hispanics, they have Puerto Ricans, Colombians, Mexicans, they have people from Ethiopia, Ghana, Uganda. It's a very diverse market. It's the only market that I've ever been to, and I've been to a lot of farmers market where when the market starts in the morning, the vendors and the customers get out from behind their stand and they do the line dance. You guys know the line dance that they do? And then we get down to business. It's really an interesting market. But the thing, as I said again, it's really important to understand that the people that come here to work come here because they have a dream. Now, like most of us, I don't think anyone in this room, especially if you have kids or you have parents, older or younger, you want for them to get the best, and no one really wants to see their kids growing up without shoes or clothes or be in or have object poverty. So a lot of people come here to do that work, and so I find them to be very skilled, they're very educated, they're very talented, and they're very motivated to not become a liability to the country, but also to maintain a high standard of professionality. And so I'm 1,000% supportive of them. And what I do is just a little fraction of what can be done, but we're moving forward. I'm moving forward trying to secure us a small piece of land that we can call our own. Maybe get a little small barn. Maybe right now, maybe we might rent a horse as a tractor, but you know, who knows? We got to start someplace. But the story is just a simple one, that within this structure that we have created, people are really galvanized around producing food that's available to everybody. And people who do it the most or do it the best right now, as part of our food chain, are the people who come from different countries to work here to make sure we have a lot of stuff to eat.
Thanks so much, Glenroy. Next up is Rebekah Hanlon from Valley Green Feast.
So thank you so much for being here. Thanks for having me. I'm Rebekah. I work with Valley Green Feast, which is a worker-owned cooperative. I have been with them since I graduated college from UMass Amherst in 2010, so I'm coming up on almost 4 years. And it has completely changed my life. I don't even know where to start. I could talk about co-ops all day, so if any of you have time after this, you just want to like chit-chat, whatever. So Valley Green Feast, our structure, we are a local food delivery service. So we've built relationships with some of the farms in this room, different producers like Real Pickles, Catalyst Kombucha, also co-ops. And we kind of gather all their stuff together and bring it to people's homes. So a really special part about Valley Green Feast and why I got involved with it originally is because of our structure. A worker-owned cooperative is owned and operated equally by all of the owners, or the workers. So you can see that picture of the 4 of us up there. We all own a 25% share in our business. We had a buy-in, and we all equally operate. It's non-hierarchical. We don't have any employees. We make all of our decisions using consensus. Sometimes it's difficult, but it's ultimately rewarding. We provide space for people to bring themselves to the table, whether it's past experiences or challenges that they've had in their life, or like a really strong opinion about whether or not we should, only source food or only source coffee from a co-op as opposed to a local business or something like that. So there's like lots of conversation, lots and lots that goes on at our meetings. Valley Green Feast was started back in 2008 as a sole proprietorship. So one woman ran it by herself for a little while. I don't know how she did it, but I'm really glad she did. And the reason why we were able to continue and why I'm here today is again because of our co-op model. Jessica decided to transition her business into the co-op because she needed to step back. And something that we don't see enough in, I think, the agricultural movement is succession planning and creating longevity, making sure that your business is going to continue even if you're not there. And I think that cooperatives are a real testament to that. Jessica was able to put in what she could to the business and knew when it was right for her to step back. And that's happened over the course of the time that I've been there. People have been there, they've given what they can, they have these experiences, but at a certain time, they need to transition onto something else. And because we're a co-op, it's not gonna stop moving. We have, ways that we can train people, ways that we can, make sure that it continues, even if I'm not there or something like that. So it's super important and something I think that we should be continuing to work on in the movement as a whole. We have a division of labor, so we all have our own areas of expertise, and we trust each other. I don't know that much about bookkeeping. I'm never going to be a numbers person, but somebody in our group has a background in that, so that's where her skills come through. And I'm not going to challenge her necessarily about some things that fall under her category. So we give each other a lot of leeway to make decisions within our own areas of expertise, but then we also work together on the ground. We're packing bags together, we're delivering together, and there's that face time where we're all doing the same job, but we all kind of have our own areas that we can excel in. A really important part of our model is humanization of the workplace. Being for young women in the business world isn't easy. It's not necessarily the hardest thing, but we have faced a lot of challenges, being taken seriously, making sure that, we are strong business leaders and not just being seen as, oh, that's cute, like, look at them, they're running a business, it's not fun. The mean of our ages is like 28 years old or something, so we're relatively young in the business world, but we all have a lot of experiences. I've been working in cooperatives for 5 years, so it's a little chunk of time. So going off that humanization is, this past year, one of our worker owners became a mother. That's a huge life change. It's also a huge change for business. And we were able to come together and make that happen for her. A lot of women, you might not see coming back to their jobs after they've left for maternity leave, and then that wealth of knowledge is gone, and they've moved on to this other part of their life, which is so beautiful. But we really wanted to create an infrastructure where Becky could become a mother, and we could be there to support her. This has been a huge year for us. We expanded into Boston through a collaboration with another worker co-op that does our deliveries out there by bicycle. So we've been meeting, 100 times more than we usually do. There's been unpaid hours. We've been putting in sweat equity. And all throughout that, there's been a crying baby at the meeting, or Becky is talking to us about finances and she's also changing a diaper. And it's just like, there's been a lot going on, but we've created an environment where she can do that. And that's really important to us. Another really important thing, or difficult challenges, has been creating a job that has a living wage and making sure that we're investing in something that we really believe in. It may not be something that I'm not making as much money had I continued on the track of becoming a physical therapist, which is what I thought I wanted to do before I learned about co-ops. Am I happier? Absolutely. I am empowered. I have a say. I can work with these other women and we can make a difference in the business world, in the agricultural world, and in this movement as a whole. And it's because of our ties to other businesses and the co-op community as a whole. We work with 10 different cooperatives. It's a really amazing network to have and to be able to work with. And I think that even though we're putting in a lot of hours to invest in a business that is going to grow and be there even when we're not there, again, that sweat equity is going into it, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
Thank you all very much for sharing your really diverse experiences and perspectives around how to ensure that local food jobs are in fact good jobs. And now I wanted to open it up to questions. We have about 10 minutes for questions for any of the panelists, and also if you have a question for either Urban or Alex, you're welcome to ask it now.
Hey Dave, can you spend a couple minutes talking about the produce bus that you're doing at Enterprise Farm?
Enterprise Farm, I don't know, this will be year 4, runs a mobile market that we do down in Springfield. It's part of an offshoot of the beauty of having a CSA farm. We have a little more control over our own destiny in terms of financial decisions we make because our members, kind of like co-op, invest in us ahead of schedule. But the whole premise of the mobile market is trying to tackle the whole struggle with food hardship and food access that exists in even our beautiful little valley. You know, as a grower for 25 years, we primarily sold in Franklin, New Hampshire County, in Boston, New York. Stuff went to LA, London, who knows. But we had never really sold that much in Hamden County, and we got this idea from a group that we worked with down in South Carolina about being able to take a fully equipped bus, like a farmer's market, and be able to drive it around. And this is year 4. We will be doing 3 bus routes this year. So the thing has really grown, and we really couldn't have done it without our partnership with Live Well Springfield, but it's a great thing.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up, Dave. Are you looking for other markets for that mobile market?
The goal is to grow it out so that the bus travels throughout the valley at least 6 days a week. At this point, we're kind of changing the nature of how we do what we do. We're trying to transition it so that the project itself can get embedded in Springfield and be run by people who are looking for work in Springfield. And we as a farm, kind of like Glenroy said, can focus on producing crops that people in these areas really want. Primarily as an organic farm, we grow a lot of lettuce, kale, collar, and chard. But the amazing part of what we've learned is that people are really looking for a lot of different kinds of products, and we'd be happy to learn how to grow them. We know cow, that's a great one. So the model will expand, and there's opportunity there. So if you wanted to check in with us, we can talk to you about it.
Hello. My question is for Orvelio. I'm wondering if you get a chance to go home again in the winter, if you have to go back and forth, or live, you know, just displaced from home for most of the year.
Pues tengo que vivir todo el año sin la conexión de mi familia porque pues es difícil volver a ir a México y volver. Es fácil ir a México, pero es difícil volver a regresar otra vez a este país.
Unfortunately, I don't have the opportunity to go home and be with my family. I have to be here all year long because it's very easy to go down to Mexico, but it's not easy to get back here.
My question is also for Orvelio and for Bliss. When I hear his story, I'm really struck by the parallels to black farmers in the South in particular who were locked into what we would call sharecropping experiences, but they were really more like indentured servitude. And as they tried to move away from that and establish their own small farms, you know, they would experience some of the same types of harassment. You know, it wasn't in a legal form, but it would be racist people coming in trucks to stop them as they're walking home or driving home from the farms. So I see a real place of opportunity for building alliances with folks having those experiences, because to me they're the same. They just come in a uniformed version here. And so I just wonder if he feels that, if he shares that same thoughts, or if they've been able to build any connections.
Sí, es algo lindo compartir con esas personas y ver que hace años atrás era diferente y pues los tiempos cambian. Ahora el racismo ya no es tanto como antes y es algo bueno porque se ve de que año en año las cosas pueden ir cambiando a un bien, no a mal.
So it's something beautiful to have seen in the last couple of years, that relationship forming and experiences with racism shifting, or the climate of racism shifting?
Sí, pues sí, yo he trabajado siempre así como lo que son con jamaiquinos y todo, y pues es algo bien, nos llevamos bien, ver que también a pesar del trabajo también crece una amistad, perdón, que crece una amistad con gente que uno conoce que es de otro país.
So through farm work, I have had the opportunity to connect with mostly Jamaican farm workers or other farm workers of color and build those relationships that are the basis of that. So also as an organization, we're looking at different ways. In many ways, the immigrant rights movement in this state and in this country is very divided, and oftentimes immigration reform, whether it's a state reform like driver's licenses that we're working for here, or a national reform, in many ways it's become focused on Latino immigrants, and oftentimes African immigrants and Asian immigrants or South Asian immigrants are cut out of that conversation or sort of sidelined in that conversation. And so something that we're working on building up in this area is how we are going to overcome the barriers that exist everywhere, but that are also very much in existence here. When we're talking about language barriers, when we're talking about racial stereotyping, limited experiences with people from other races or other cultures that are bound up into limited experiences that happen at work, or an experience that happens with a cop, or just very brief moments, how we're really confronting the fact that there are large histories of racism between communities of color, and how we can be building with Black African immigrant communities or Jamaican immigrant communities in Western Mass, because although we don't have a membership of Jamaican immigrants, we know that folks who come with work visas don't necessarily go home for the same reasons that folks come without visas in the first place. And mostly the place that we're seeing those workers or those folks right now are in detention centers. And we haven't found that community, where that community, because so many undocumented communities are really underground communities, we haven't made that strong connection with that underground community outside of the detention center. And so that's actually something that we're doing strategic planning on at this point as an organization, how we're able to connect specifically the large population of Jamaican farm workers who come, who probably are not always going home, how we're able to overcome language, how we're able to overcome any stereotypes or institutionalized ideas about oppression that exist between those communities, so that we're not just being seen as a Latino-only fight, but we're also working with other groups.
We probably have time for one more question, so.
Encouraging ex-inmates to get training and connection with good jobs.
Yeah, I don't think that anybody on the panel has direct experience with that, although I would, if somebody in the room does and want to say a few words about that, I would welcome that.
I don't have direct experience, but you could contact Julie Rawson at Many Hands Organic Farm in Barrie. They've been doing this for a number of years and have a lot of dedication to that program.
Thank you. And I think Dave wants to say a few words about that as well.
I can speak to it a little bit with the H2A farm worker program that we use. It's obviously there to fill jobs if you can't find people locally, but the way that program works is we post job orders through the whole system that are posted all the way to California. So anybody with any kind of experience, doesn't have to be years and years, is eligible for those jobs as long as they know where to look and find them. So that might be one avenue to look into.
There are a few prisons in Massachusetts that have either maintained their traditional farming program or newly starting them. And there was a very exciting project where we have a school system in Eastern Mass which is buying beef from a prison nearby. and it had been a dairy farm on the prison, and they converted to raising beef, and they were able to sell the beef to the school at a lower price, because obviously they're not paying the prisoners very much. But we began to see where you might be able to really begin to have training programs in the jails, because a lot of them still have a lot of land. And so you might be able to come out of jail already knowing some of the skilled labor needed for either vegetable production or for meat production. That's something we could work towards in the future.
We could have a day-long workshop on any one of the issues raised by the panelists here today or raised by the keynotes. But what we tried to do here is provide a breadth of things that are happening in our community and possibilities for engaging this question of how do we create good food jobs in the Pioneer Valley. And we're going to have an opportunity to go more into depth in the small breakout groups with resource people that are coming up. So yeah, I just want to thank all of our panelists and thank you all for being here, and we're going to move on.